Hi, everyone. I'm Sandra Ingerman,
And I'm Renee Barabo.
and we welcome you to the Shamans Cave. This is a remarkable opportunity for us to gather together and to enter the Shamans Cave together to dream a new world into being. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Shamans Cave.
I'm Renee Barabo.
And I'm Sandra, and we have another exciting show for you this week.
We're still talking about creation, and my guess is, since shamans are creators, we could be talking about this subject for a long time, but next week we'll move on to sacred tools. But today we're going to talk about, one of the things we were talking about last week was that we had different formulas for creation, and so we thought today we would share our different formulas for creation and then maybe take you on a journey so you can see which parts of Sandra's work you might resonate with and more what parts of my creation work you want to work with. And one thing and I don't know for Sandra, but for me, I have 7 wind dynamics of creation. And so I'm going to stick to the one I started with last week about gestation as a format for creating. And, if you want to know more about the other ones, well, you'll either be waiting for my book or take one of my advanced classes or listen over time where I'm sure they'll come in other various formats. What about you, Sandra?
Well, when I wrote Medicine for the Earth back in, the late 1990s, I started to look at miracles. And what I did is I researched miracles from every single spiritual and religious tradition around the world. And I came up with, I read books, I read the Bible, I read the Kabbalah, I read the East Indian material, the shamanic stories. I was looking for miraculous healings, not where somebody had a dream and had a miraculous healing, but where somebody actually went for a ceremony or to a healer and a miraculous healing ended up being the result. And so I looked into these stories and I came up with 7 elements that go into every miracle. And so I talk about these 7 elements as a way to create miracles, a way to transform negativity, and they're also how we create.
How exciting. And I'm going to be so curious to see where we overlap on this, because basically a lot of my work was not although we did it seems like must have the same stack of books by our bed because we both went on to a deep dive into creation stories. And, I've been reading everything I can about religion, and understanding, because when I was coming out with a book, Winds of Spirit, to say that God is a wind, I figured, oh my God, Renee, you better be able to stand on that platform with a little bit of information, because I was never, in my mind, talk about a belief, I was never a scholar. So when you're living with that belief, it's like, well, my biggest fear was, oh my God, they're going to show me up as a fraud. So a lot of what I've worked with over the years is changing beliefs, because we have a plethora of thoughts, but then our beliefs are something totally different. So I thought today that I want to balance with what you're doing, I thought I would focus on how to create a new belief.
Oh, nice. That's beautiful. I love it.
Oh, who wants to share their secret formula first?
I think you planted a huge seed for us about how to transform a belief. So I think I'm ready to hear what you have to say.
Really cool. And it's funny that we're talking about planting a belief, because the dynamic from the 7 that I chose is the gestation. That's all about it's all about that going into that cosmic egg where you can take a new belief and divide it and multiply. Now, one of the things excuse me, is that people don't know the difference between what they're thinking and what they believe.
That's true.
And what came up for me was certainly was one of my own examples of how that happened. However, if we think about how can we use the forces of nature that have been on this planet for 14 billion years, just think of all of the potential in that nature egg that you can use to transform a limiting belief. And I think we were talking a little bit before about where sometimes we think that we, can't balance the mundane from the super ordinary. Well, in order to really transcend a belief, you need to spend time in that other ordinary. And that other ordinary is that time that transcends time and space. Because think about it, no matter what the creation was there time and space before creation? Or has this been something that's been evolving over the years? So for example, in the spring, it's the east, it's new beginnings, new beliefs. So this is the perfect time of year to gestate a new belief for yourself. And how do you even know where to start? So for me, the process starts with resistance. And think about wind and resistance, because wind is always meeting with some resistant force, whether it's a tree, whether it's a pebble, whether it's anything yourself, if you're walking in a strong windstorm where you might be closing your eyes. And so that's the place to start with that, recreating that idea, is to see where the resistance is strongest in your life at any given moment. And from that place of resistance, then you can actually start to see is what I'm thinking about this every single day incongruent with what I truly believe? And, an example of that is like, you might think that you're all loving with all your neighbors and everything else, but you might have grown up in a family that had a real strong prejudicial, was prejudiced against, my family was prejudiced against everything. And recently I saw that underlying belief was still showing up in some of the things that I was thinking. As much as I thought I was this really great person, or that I was so all encompassing, I wasn't. And, and it shows up in cunning, baffling, and powerful ways. So sometimes we have to understand that even what we think that we're being good is a belief system that might need to change. So once you see that all of a sudden something comes up and hits you in the face as a strong wind of resistance, then what I do is I invite you to go into I'm going to call it the other ordinary, because for most of us as shamans, it really is pretty ordinary, that you go in and you step into that egg, put yourself into that timeless and spaceless egg of creation, where that you get to gestate a new idea, a new way. And so for me last year, the whole idea that I was changing was, I wasn't trying to change an idea about how I was living in the world, but I was trying to work on creating spaciousness for something new to emerge. So often we go into this place of creation with the outcome. And in the way that I'm proposing here is that you don't go with the outcome, but you go with the state of how you want to be in this cosmic egg, so that you can then maybe get a whole new idea that you weren't even thinking about. I think there's a lot of other things you'll, have to do to bring it forward into the world. But just today, I'm going to invite you into the see how you want to even hold the space around shifting. What do you think?
That's lovely. I really love that. Yeah. How do you want to give people that experience?
Oh, I thought we were going to do that at the end, when we were going to drum in and let people go into either one way or the other. I'm not sure if that will work, but at the end of the call, we'll give you like some drumming and some rattling space to feel out which of these formulas might resonate more with your heart in the moment.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's also not so much which formula resonates, because there are pieces, you know, that will fit in. And I think that it's more, where do you need to focus right now? You know, what are you missing? What keys are you missing? Where are you undisciplined in your work? And so we're hoping with the drumming and rattling that we do at the end, you get a vision about, ooh, this is where I need to start doing more work. I've just been letting this go. I haven't been putting myself in an ache of spaciousness, or I haven't been working with some of the elements that Sandra's talking about. And so the elements that came up when I was doing all my reading, and it's important to understand that there's no order. One is not more important than the other. And every time I share them in a completely different order. And they all kind of come together as a holograph, you know. They're not separate in any way. They come to a place of wholeness. And so when I started to research miracles, I noticed that there was always some kind of intention. And one of the things, I really don't like to bridge science into shamanism. And I know everybody is so excited about bridging shamanism into science. But for me, it takes the mystery out of the work. So I'm not big on, let's talk about how science intersects with shamanism. But I will bring in this one piece about science and intention, is that so many different research studies have been found, have been done, and that it's been found that to your brain, whenever you state an intention, your brain interprets that as action has already taken place. Mm-hmm. And so once you set an intention, I want to create a better life for myself. I want to create more health. I want to create more spaciousness in my life. I want to bring this new project out into the world. Again, as Renee's saying, not necessarily with outcome, but what is your intention? It doesn't have to have an outcome, you know, where it's a fixed outcome. Just you want to bring in the goodness, and there's an intention, and the outcome will be for your highest good. But it's really important to set an intention, and we know that in shamanic journeys, when people just go floating out into non-ordinary reality without setting an intention first, they oftentimes have very chaotic journeys. There's no path, there's no focus, there's been no intention, and so there's just a lot of floating going on. Now the spirits might come in at that time and give you the biggest information or healing in your life, and so we don't always have to journey with an intention, but I'm trying to make a point here that oftentimes without setting an intention, we float in ways that are too unfocused and ungrounded to be able to create anything, even if we don't have an outcome to it. There has to be some intention. Intention fuels our actions. And love, in all traditions, love is the greatest force of healing. We spend all this money. We go from teacher to teacher. We want to find what's the most powerful healing method there is on the planet. And for thousands and thousands of years, the same answer has come up. It's love, because you can be the best technician in your healing work. You can do the ceremony exactly right, but there has to be that unconditional love, and that means not personal love. But when we talked about creation stories, I kept repeating again and again that please experience, journey, meditate, spend time in nature, experience how much love went into your creation. Because from the power of the universe, from the creative powers that be, love is where the greatest creations come from. And it's unconditional. It's just, it's not dependent on who you are or what you're doing. It's just love. And so people who are in the presence of a healer or a mystic or a holy person or a shaman who emanates love, heals, have miraculous healings just by being in their presence, not by any ceremony that they're doing. And I don't think I have to explain that. I think people understand it. We don't always know how to operationalize it. How do we get into that place of non-personal love? But that's part of our journey in this lifetime, is to embrace the same love as the creative forces of the universe. And then there's unity, union. And what I mean by that is when you see a miraculous healing happen, whoever is channeling that healing energy or emanating that healing force is in complete union with the divine force. Mm-hmm. It's not Renee doing the work, connecting to the wind. It's not Sandra doing the work, connecting to Isis. It's Renee is the wind, Sandra is Isis. And so where you see, and there's so many different stories, and I write about many different examples of this in Medicine for the Earth, and I'll just give you one. Sai Baba, he was a controversial mystic figure, guru, but the bottom line is he was able to do amazing miracles. And he has a very poetic way of saying this, but simplistically, he says, the only difference between me and you is I know who I am and you don't. And what he meant is I know that I'm God and you have forgotten. And so in shamanic cultures, the shaman becomes the divine force, the divine being, whether it's in the form of animal or plant or element, and is in complete union. There is no shaman there. There is only divinity coming through. So union is part of all creation, because everything is created out of some form of sacred union. Harmony is another element that's really important, and the alchemists talk about when you experience harmony within, then there will be harmony without. So when we do our creation work, finding a place of harmony inside of ourselves, being able to really do our drumming, our rattling, our singing, our dancing, our prayers, our ceremonies, to step away from what our personality is so upset about, and to find that natural harmony that is always within us and creates harmony without. And then concentration, and I talked about this already in one of our shows. In our culture, we don't know how to concentrate. And part of creation is about really being able to concentrate on what you're doing. We start to do a ceremony, a creation ceremony, and then we start thinking about what we're going to have for dinner and all the emails we have to answer when we're done. And that creates a break in the chain. We have to have concentration to be able to gestate and to be able to create anything. And what goes along with that is focus. And so with concentration, you're fueling your intention by staying really present, fully present with what you're doing. And focus is where you kind of have a picture of where you're going towards without you being wedded to a particular outcome, but your intention is bringing you to a particular place, and you have to keep walking on that road. And I would say that concentration and focus are the hardest for people in our culture, because with concentration, as I said, we lose our concentration so quickly, and everybody I know complains about this. And with focus, we're doing our work, we're loving beings, we're unconditional love, we're in union, we're emanating light, and then we read the news, and we read about some tragic story, something that upsets us, and we just say, oh, this work is worthless. And so we just lost our focus, and we fell off the path, and we have to brush ourselves off. And so I love the metaphor that I used to read about focus of, imagine holding a camera and you're always moving the camera. You're never keeping the camera still on what you're trying to take the picture of. And that's focus. And so we have to keep our lens on where we're going and not lose it so easily. Every time some bad news comes in, we go, okay, this is what's happening. I bring my fuel, my energy to a greater state of concentration. I hold my focus, and I keep walking ahead no matter what's going on around me. And then the last part, last element that I bring in is imagination, because how do we create anything unless we have an imagination? And imagination is a God-given gift, and we're dreaming the world that we live in all the time. From a shamanic point of view, nothing is real here. As Renee was saying, the non-ordinary realms are more real than here. It's believed that we're dreaming all of this, and we're dreaming it through our imagination. So if you want to change your life, if you want to change the planet, you have to start using your imagination to bring in the elements of what it is that you want to start to create. You know, use your imagination. What would your life look like? What would the world look like? And so if we bring intention, love, union, harmony, concentration, focus, and imagination together, we create the miracle of creation. I use create twice in that sentence, but it is creation.
I kind of substitute it sometimes for creativity, because it's all like about creating. And as you're talking, I just couldn't help but look down at my wind dynamics of creation and see that, you know, one thing I pulled out was one specific one, but, you know, it's all the same, the direct revelation out of the chaos, you know, the gestation that we're working with, you know, the oppositional forces that, you know, we're going between two worlds, because that's the world we live in, and the partnership with nature, which gives us, you know, 14 billions of years of nature to pull from for this work. And then, you know, the process order, that focus, that staying, that building blocks, you take, you know, you set up the picture, you order your experience so that, you know, like when you have something that's incongruent with what you're trying to create, if you have good habits, like I'm sure Sandra was talking about one time about cleaning all of her sacred objects in the spring. So she has those great habits to fall back on. So, and, you know, and I have I've taken up to wind walking. And so when things are not, you have good habits to bring you back, so that you keep changing that subconscious landscape, so that the what's in your consciousness starts to shift with that as well. And then, you know, I'm working with the other one with the desire and the explosion. But then I'm there like, okay, can those negative forces of nature also be part of how we divinely create, even from a place of goodness in the world? So I think we're like, so our processes aren't that very far off. It doesn't seem.
No, absolutely. And how could they be? Because they're all part of nature.
It's just interesting that, okay, so we got these billion years of natures to work with, right? And Sandra had a direct revelation of hers, and I had a direct revelation of mine, and they both come from platitudes of goodness. I'm trying to be of service to the world. So, so you don't have to use ours. You get to get your own direct revelation about how you can uniquely create in the world. And once you master that, you can, my friends always say they never worry about me making a living, because I just have this ability to create one thing to the next, because I think there's some way I've tapped into that formula for creation of that, planting the seed and letting it grow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think when we make a decision to be the most creative person that we can be, when we make that decision, we enter into a particular flow in the universe. And whenever we enter into a flow, we end up moving to outcomes that might be different than what we might have pictured, but bring us to amazing places.
It's like Isis telling you that she'd find another person to write the book, and the wind's telling me, they picked me because I was good for working. You don't know, you just keep showing up in this creative cycle, and the direct revelations come to you. And I think they're always more surprising, at least in my life, than I could have ever imagined.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and that's part of the fun part about being so creative is I know for myself, I just loved the surprise element of what ends up manifesting. As I put all these elements together, I end up manifesting something better than I had given, that I thought that I had the ability for. But again, when you enter into the flow, you have the partnership of nature, you have the partnership of the universe. It's all working in an alchemical way, and you end up cooking something that might be completely different than you started with, but oh my God, it's extraordinary.
And if you put it into a bigger time thing, like I was posting yesterday for International Women's Day about how when I was a pioneer chef, which was very creative, I had no idea that I was laying, opening the pathways. I was forging that road west for all of those other women who would follow in the kitchen, because I was willing to change in the all men's changing room. And you don't, right then I thought I was just being creative and saving my life. But in the longer road back, all of these, it's just a little speck, but in a way bigger world than you can even imagine. So, never discount what you are creating. But I think we're at a time when we're going to give people, and I like something you just said about being in a spaciousness to grow in the consciousness of your own goodness of creation, or how would we want to invite people into this drumming and rattling space with us?
Well, I'll just repeat that the different elements that I really looked at was intention, love, really being able to get into union with a divine force in my creation work. So I was able to put Sandra out of the way with my shamanic preparation work that I do. Harmony, finding harmony within. How well do you concentrate? Do you focus? Do you have a good imagination? And so, and then Renee can give a summary of what she shared in the very beginning. And then as we drum and rattle, for you to tune in to what might you be missing or not missing, but not paying enough attention to, not putting enough fuel to in your own creation process. So while we drum and rattle, it will be a time of reflection for you of what do you need to add into your creation process. So Renee, from me, we have intention, love, unity, harmony, concentration, focus, imagination. And could you just say again the important part of the creation process for you?
To find where there's resistance in your life, where you're not creating without an effortless flow. So where is that resistance that you might ask to be shifted so that you could even get into the flow? So to have a willingness to be willing to get into the right intention and the love and the unity and the harmony and concentration. So for me, it's like, okay, what's keeping you from creating?
Yeah, so as we drum and rattle, start with the resistance and then reflect on, do I need a little bit more intention, a little bit more understanding of heart expansion and of union with the divine and harmony and concentration or focus or imagination. So start with the resistance, and then what elements might you want to be thinking about, or what new elements that we haven't mentioned are part of your creation process. So this is a time of reflection.
And just before we start, let me let you know, you can now get the Shamans Cave to your inbox every week. Over at shamanstv.com, sign up and we'll deliver it to you and you'll get it first. How about that for creation? and just so if you leave before our meditation, you might want to come back and visit this again. And I'm going to do some drumming and she's going to do some rattling.
And here we go.
Are you leading us in anything, or are we just drumming?
Yeah, no, this is a time of reflection. So everybody, as we drum and rattle for you, go in and focus on your resistance and go in and look at what elements of creation you might be missing in your own practice. Okay, here we go. Okay, start to bring yourself back. So sometimes it's important for us to take time out of our practice to reflect on where we are. And I think sometimes we keep going for new information, new things. And sometimes we need to take a time out and say, you know, I haven't been focusing on where I'm resistant. I am really unfocused. I do need to learn a better sense of focus. And so sometimes before we go on with the work, it's really important for us to stop and reflect on where we need to be paying more attention in our process.
Absolutely. When I was drumming, all of a sudden I went to like a moment of creation in our own galaxy, in our own universe, where it's like, well, why don't we revisit, you know, all of like that moment of time and see, you know, if there's a whole new strand of creation I can pull out from the beginning, before there was time and before there was space, and imagine creating with all of that possibility and potential and love.
Wow. Yeah.
I hope that I'm not sure if the drumming overdid the rattling. If you can hear us both, I could only hear me drumming.
Well, as we keep saying, Renee and we're learning as we're going with the technology, and we've really appreciated everybody's patience on that. And yeah, drumming and rattling live over Zoom is always an interesting experience, but we keep working on perfecting it. And so, you know, we just really want to thank everybody for joining us and being part of this adventure together.
You know, and what I want to just end with is that I get this great sense, and I shared it on the Shamans Cave wall the other day, that we're holding space for this healing that's taken place. And for me, days after our show, I always seem to get a new insight, a new direct revelation, a new way of looking at something. And I think that's more that talking about going into that place of harmony. Because one thing I feel between us is a real sense of harmony, and so that we're both coming from this really place of we want to serve. And so we're here to serve you. We hope you stay with us weekly as we figure out the technology and the production and all of these other things. And I'm so happy to share this time with you, Sandra.
Yeah, I am so delighted. Even my husband, he's used to seeing me being resistant before I do things, and he sees my excitement building every time Renee and I are getting ready to do a Shamans Cave together. And so it's been a very beautiful process for me. I have incredibly deep respect for you and your work, and I have such deep respect for everybody out there who is tuning in, as we're really trying to hold space, and with a planet with overpopulation and a lot of challenges that are coming up, what are the simple things that we can do together to shift our own consciousness, knowing that every change that we make is going to be in service to the collective too.
Great. Thank you. We'll see you all next week.
And don't forget to go to shamanstv.com.
Yes. We update the shows there every week, and so you can see it there a couple of places. And if you would rather just get that in your inbox, please sign up for the email. And the only thing we're using this particular Shamans Cave email for is to send you the show.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Sandra.